All right, first order of business is to approve the agenda. We do need to have an executive session tonight for contracts. So other than that,
I'll make a motion.
Any other amendments to the agenda? Amanda?
Can we do, can we move the old business to before finance?
The Bridges program update?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have an issue with that. If you're ready.
Yeah, hey, just in time.
Okay. So with those amendments, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. General public comment. Is there anyone tonight who wishes to speak? All right, moving along to the consent agenda. We have the minutes and warrants, so we can approve the consent agenda as a whole. Any questions about the consent agenda? All right, motion would be in order to approve the consent agenda. Amanda?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, motion by Amanda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. Okay, so we'll move on to old business, Bridges program update. So at our last meeting, we had some questions about the Bridges program around, I guess, the structure of it, you know, any changes that might happen. And I just wanted to make sure that everyone's aware that, you know, like during this discussion, we're going to talk about the program itself, and, you know, not necessarily the students or anything that could be identifying of the students. So, and tonight we have Tammy Rescott here.
Okay, let me hand it out.
Yeah,
So,
nice.
what I did was, Katie Loomis, is she on? She might not be on because she's been ill. She's still sick. Okay. So what I did was I came up with a description of the classroom, but I did come up with a list, not identifying the students, but where their home base is. So you could see whether they are Wellspring or Quarry Valley, because I know a couple of the questions, Amanda Whedon and I actually ran into each other earlier this week and we kind of had a brief conversation. Is she still on?
Yeah.
Okay. And so I think, I'm going to pass this out because I think that this is important to start my discussion. You want to look at it first before I do, just make sure you're okay with that.
Yeah, we could follow it.
I just, with this.
Yeah.
Is-
Yeah, that should be fine. I mean,
You saw this. You okay with this?
Tammy, can you give Carol a copy and I'll pick it up in the morning for myself?
Yes, I'll have one for you, Amanda.
Thanks.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It was waiting for your response.
Thank you. I got one.
I went to Wells. That's why I'm waiting.
Thank you. Oh, so,
I went to Wells.
This is, it's okay for us to have,
yes, that's
Right,
right.
because
but I don't
it
want to
does not
share this
become
information
public.
out loud even.
Nope, I'm gonna make a general
Yes.
statement on this.
Yeah, 'cause-
So,
Yeah.
Right.
Identifying information.
right. So the Bridges classroom is made up of students that are within our SU. And right now, the staffing within the Bridges classroom are SU employees. They're all special education employees. So this is an SU classroom. Currently, all students that come to this classroom are within this classroom for the entire day. At this time, no student access any gen ed services within the Wells School building. If at any time a non-Wells Spring student was to or were able to access a general education classroom or a gym or special, thank you, then we would be looking at a billing of tuition. That would be just like when they were at the wellness center. So that would be, at that time, that would be a conversation we would have with the board. Quarry Valley would be paying tuition to Wellspring for that student to access fourth grade general education classroom or a special. But at this time, there is none that would be doing that. Update on the Bridge classroom. Kids are off to a good start. They're getting used to the routines, coming to school, meeting their new friends in the classroom, setting up expectations, developing their culture, meeting their new teacher. We have a behavioral specialist in there. We have 2 BCBAs that we're utilizing at this program classroom, at our Connections classroom at Pontney High School, and our other 2 classrooms, one at Proctor Elementary and one at West Rutland. We also have our school psychologist, Dr. Shannon Newell, who is also working with them within that classroom. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you would like me to talk about.
I mean, that kind of summarizes what, any questions I had were, I think you answered them all. And I think that's where it kind of came up was, you know, when we met at the SU and kind of covered the structure on, you know, what's going to happen after the wellness center and where the students were going to go. We took that information and brought it back to this board, and, you know, at our last meeting, it had changed. And I think, you know, curiosity, you know, when we talk about the budget, and then so you kind of covered that, you know, they're not going to be accessing Gen Ed or any Gen Ed programs, because, you know, when we had that discussion, it was like, well, would we want our students paying tuition? No, we want to keep our students here. So, I mean, all that makes sense. You know, but, you know, it's the same thing is like, well, where is this like, the wellness center 2.0, you know? So, but I mean, it, you know, like I said before, I think, whatever it takes, I think kids.
So this Bridges classroom is structured very differently than the wellness center.
Okay.
Yes. So if you read the description that I handed to you, the wellness center was not designed this way. The wellness center was more of, as my predecessor had described it, as a holding place for our students. This is a classroom where our students are actively learning. When I talk about our BCBA, they're going to be working with the families along with the teacher and the staff within this classroom to be working on behavioral tools and academics. So it is something that bridges into the home, also in the classroom. So it is a academic classroom that's a social emotional classroom. So it is not, we're not just holding a child there for that 45 days to see what we're going to do with them. They're learning. They're learning how to identify their behaviors. They're learning how to understand their behaviors. They're learning how to deal with their behaviors with the end goal is to be back into a regular classroom. So this is, I say it's a little bit of Manchester Village School. It's a little bit of BAC. It's a little bit of a regular classroom setting to help them. So, And a little bit of BOCES from New York we threw in there for a little salt and pepper. We're mixing it all up and we're getting these kiddos what they need in a school setting, not out on an island.
Gotcha. I don't know who had their hand up first.
Oh,
Mary?
boy.
Amanda.
Mary can go first. That's okay.
Okay, Mary.
Sure. So sometimes I get lost. Is it board certified behavioral specialist or analyst when you see BCBA?
Analyst. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
Amanda.
Just a couple questions about like the back to the revenue potential piece.
Yep.
So if they're not receiving general ed, then there wouldn't be a full opportunity for that, which makes perfect sense. But I wonder about like foods and materials, and if I know we can't discuss it publicly, but are we talking, one child that's not ours that we're just feeding one kid, or are we feeding like 5 kids or accessing materials for those? I wonder if there is a spot where we should be looking at Wells Springs using Wells Springs things for students within the supervisory union, not just Wells Springs.
I can talk about materials if it's okay with the board. So our classroom is fully stocked with all supplies and materials that we brought from the wellness center, which had a lot. So we're all set, and any need of supplies and materials will be brought in through the SU, through our budget. So that's not anything that Wells Springs will have any responsibility financial for, because this is an SU classroom.
And meals are reimbursed by federal funds.
Universal.
And then my second question, and I don't know if we can discuss this now either, but like staffing. So all of the special ed staff are SU employees, which makes perfect sense. But last year when we were looking at our budget, we had decided that Wells Springs had a need for 2 special educators. So now Wells Springs has 1 special educator and the Bridges classroom has 1 special educator. Are we bringing a second special educator in for Wells Springs?
Kirk, you want me to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, that's.
Yeah. There is no need for additional special education teacher. Like I had discussed with you when I had met with you, as I'm doing my special ed audit throughout the SU and I'm looking at the numbers of caseloads, we were able to staff the Bridges classroom with the existing special ed teachers at Wells Spring, or at Wells, sorry, not you. And we do not need to hire additional staff.
Any other questions?
Space seemed to be a concern at the old facility. How are we, is it adequate for the time being?
It is with the students that we have there now, yes. We didn't transition all of the kids from the wellness center to Wells. So the ones that we did transition over, the number of kids, we're fine. And we did add additional kiddos from Wells into that. And we have plenty of space.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
It's pretty cool. You should
Thank-
stop in and see
Thank
it.
you. I will.
Yeah, I appreciate, I get excited, you could tell, right? It's just, I love it.
Okay. I think that's all we had, so.
That's cool. Great. I drove like crazy to get here on time. I'm good. I'm good now. I'm gonna sit though
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
You're gonna enjoy the board meeting.
Yeah, that's
So you
okay.
can at least take your time getting home.
Yeah. Couldn't believe I pulled in, not a car.
Okay. All right, thank you, Tammy, for coming out here and providing this updating report and answering our questions and all the work you're doing with the Bridges program. So,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
all right, so we're gonna move on to finance.
But there was an updated budget in the packet around draft 3. Really not much change since the last draft. I think the only new information that we received as far as the impacting the actual expense and budget was vocational. And our number was very close. If anything, it changed by just a couple dollars, so nothing significant. So we're currently looking at expense budget that's up by 5.54%, and education spending that's up 2.84%. And that is listed on the first page under the summary of changes. And one of the reasons why our education spending is not up as much as the expense is due to prior year surplus for both Wells Springs. We have $158,000 surplus, as well as the SU issued a refund for prior year surplus of $67,000. So a total of about $220,000 in one-time money that's being, at this point, refunded to the taxpayers in the form of education spending reduction to help lower down the tax rate. On the last page of the packet, I have provided a tax rate estimate. Unfortunately, we were waiting on two important numbers in the calculation from the state. We have received one final number. The other one is still pending at this time, but I have used the last estimate that we received. But I'll go through the calculation and point out that information as we go through it. So to calculate the tax rate, it's a multi-step process. So first we look at our total expense, which I mentioned is up by 5.54%. We then calculate education spending, which is the amount that we need to raise in property taxes. That's a calculation of total expense minus any local revenues. Local revenues would be anything other than property taxes. So currently our education spending is up by 2.84%. The next step is to divide the education spending by our weighted pupils. This is an area where Wells Springs is seeing some significant change. Based on the latest report, which is as of a couple weeks ago from the AOE, the weighted pupils for Wells Springs is dropping from 490 to 465. And that is based on a reduction in ED as well as FRL numbers. We are hoping that that's going to increase a little bit. We have provided some updates, but the state has not provided us an updated report yet. So unfortunately, this is the best information we have to go by. We are expecting an update any day now. All superintendents were required to certify the data at the end of last week. So we were hoping that a revised report would come out at the beginning of this week. But unfortunately, nothing has been released yet. So when we take our spending divided by our pupils, we get an ed spending per pupil of $13,127, which is an 8.45% increase. The next step is to divide that spending per pupil divided by the state yield. The state yield is a figure that comes out it's on December 1st by the tax commissioner. It is his recommendation for the legislators. This number isn't actually finalized until around April or May. After town meeting day, most budgets have been approved. The legislators will look at total spending and a number of other factors and decide on the property yield. At the end of the last legislative session, the state did change the calculation of the yield as well as the CLA and have applied a new statewide adjustment factor that is impacting both of those numbers. So the yield this year's estimate is 8,553, but that has been adjusted by the state adjustment factor, which is 72.36%. Without that adjustment factor, the yield would have actually increased by approximately 20%. So an increase in the yield helps bring down tax rates. The other side of that is that they have also adjusting your CLA by that same adjustment factor. And so the net impact is zero. It's just shuffling the shift from the yield to the CLA. Again, it doesn't have any impact. It's just changing the calculations to make things a little bit more complicated. So we divide our spending per pupil divided by the yield to get our equalized tax rate of $1.53. And then the final step is to apply the CLA. Each town has a different CLA. The CLA for Middletown is currently 96.7. That isn't the adjusted CLA, based on that adjustment factor. The CLA before the adjustment factor is 69.97, which was a pretty large decrease from the prior year. Last year CLA was 82.88. So that's over 12 points. CLA is common level of appraisal, which means compares the fair market value of your home to the assessed value. So as the fair market value of homes increases, the CLA decreases. So what this is saying is that all the homes in Middletown increased an average of 12% over the last year. For Wells, the actual CLA is 95.67. The adjusted CLA after the adjustment factor is 132. Last year CLA was 107. So Wells has recently gone through a townwide reappraisal, and so that's why their CLA is much higher. So after you apply those CLAs, you're looking at a tax rate of $1.58 for Middletown and $1.16 for Wells, which is an increase of 11 cents for Middletown and 2.5 cents for Wells.
Increase or decrease for Wells?
An increase. Percentage wise is that it's 7.5% for Middletown and 2.25% for
Not
Wells.
just the graph makes it look like it's gone down at Wells.
Yeah.
I'll check that out. So the biggest thing really impacting you tonight, other than those CLAs, which is the biggest thing that's new information, is really that weighted pupils. That decrease from 490 to 465, which is a 25 weighted pupil decrease. It has a pretty significant impact. Almost 5%.
Yeah, that was my question. Is that long-term weighted ADM change? If that's what's having an impact on the budget.
So the board at the last meeting did ask us to bring back some information regarding potential cut scenarios, but I would hold off and discuss those in executive session.
Okay. All right. We can do that. Okay. Any questions about this? Amanda?
Sorry. I was just wondering if the board would be in agreement to increase the board stipend, not by a lot, but when looking at our contract recommendations and things, we're paying the coaches $700. The board members are getting $500. I know it's a thankless job. I know we sign up to do it, and it's our choice. But I was wondering if the board would be in favor of at least matching that $700 amount instead of keeping it at $500. Or exceeding if we don't want to match.
Thoughts? I don't have an opinion on that. If keep it or take it. So I defer to the rest of everybody else.
So currently the board chair gets 700 and board members get 500. And then in addition to that, the SU representatives are paid $100 per meeting stipend.
That's what I said too. And I looked through my deposits. I swear it's 50. I don't know where the 100 comes in. I'm glad you said that, Meredith. But I mean, if we make hours from 5 to 7, that's an increase by 2. Make the chairs from 7 to 9, that's an increase by 2. Keep the SU def whatever 50 or 100, whatever it is, or don't do anything with it and leave it the same. I keep looking at these stipends, and not that they're not worthy of their money. I just think that we keep approving extra money for everybody else and not ourselves. And I was wondering if it was something that the board would want to consider.
Maybe that's something to consider after executive session.
Okay. Yeah, we can come back to that after executive session.
Okay.
I don't mean talk about it in executive session, but I mean, after we talk about the stuff,
In executive.
the other stuff. in
Okay.
session, we can talk about it. So some more. So,
Would we need to do, we have to approve the budget tonight though, don't we?
Yes.
We do.
So would we be approving the budget after executive session?
yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
So we're approving it without the final yield number.
Well, we won't have a final yield number until after town meeting day,
Oh, okay.
but the
one that you said,
weighted pupils.
yes. Oh, that's the one that you said might change a little bit,
Yes.
but not a lot.
Oh, okay. So that's highlighted too. So that's not finalized. Because I remember you were waiting for some of that information last month, right?
Yeah, so as of last month, we were waiting on the weighted pupils, the CLA and the yield. Those are the three estimates. So CLA is finalized. Typically by now we have a finalized weighted ADM, but the state is behind again. So-
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So any other questions pertaining to the budget? All right. So I'm sure we're going to come back to this, for the approval after we have some other discussions pertaining to the budget. So, and I think, actually, since we're still on the budget discussion, and at our last meeting, we did talk about the warning, which, I think the question was, and I don't know if the board wants to still consider it, but we did potentially talk about capital maintenance. Because that was on the warning, and when we talked about the warning, that was something for the board to consider. And so, I think we need to make that determination now. So how do folks feel about capital maintenance? And that would come from the surplus, right? Yeah.
Correct. It was on the draft last month and it's not on the draft tonight.
Oh, it's not?
I did remove it and we can add it back on, but I had removed it just based on where your budget currently is. I didn't think that would be something that you would move forward on, so I deleted it, but we can always add it back on if the board decides to.
Article 9 is not what you're talking about?
Yeah. Oh, well, I have an update on it here that
Okay.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought perhaps because it's a little differently worded.
Yeah, I mean, and I always had it in my head that we were gonna have that conversation, whether it was on the warning or not, because I think there wasn't a consensus on whether or not to keep it or not. And I'll just say, my thought is not to take the surplus and use it to the capital maintenance fund. But I guess. So I don't know if folks want to hold off on that or Mary?
Yeah, just to be clear, so was there previous discussion about what the surplus would be used for, if not partially for the capital improvement fund?
We're using it to go toward the budget,
So
to lower the budget.
Taxes.
Okay, haven't we talked about this in the past, that it would just be such a nominal? I'm just saying, like, our 5-year plan has a lot on it, on the docket, just, putting that out there.
There's also the perceived The way I've heard of it, discussed in the past too, is if there's, no surplus, say next year, then the shock of an increased tax, because we don't have anything to put against that budget, may be perceived by the public as, something outside, something happening,
Larger increase.
larger increase. Personally, I'm for, putting money into that capital maintenance fund just because we have old buildings, and if we can put away some of the money towards those projects for those rainy days if things happen, I think that's gonna be helpful. Or big things like when we're going against the audit next year, for whatever they're called,
PFPs.
Yeah,
PFPs, PCBs,
PCBs.
whatever acronym they're using.
Now, I understand, again, the discussion too was like, there's a pot of money there for the state's allocating for mediation, but that might dry out. So giving us a little safety net.
I mean, I think we need to keep the capital improvement fund up. We got a lot of big ticket items coming in the next few years. And if the money's here now to put it in there, that's, it may not be there later. We might hate to have to bond something. Never replace a big piece of equipment if we can pay for it out of our budgets.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be huge, but I think some amount. Like I think last year, what was it, up to 75? We said
Not to exceed 65.
65. Okay.
Yeah. So what amount are folks thinking about?
I'll just throw out a number. We can 30 as a starting point.
What's the potential for the surplus? What's it looking like now? If there is one.
For this current year?
Yeah.
I don't have that information tonight.
Mary?
Yeah, that was my same question.
Anyone else?
If there is some surplus, I think 30,000 would be great, but I feel like, and that, the way that article is written, it leaves it open if there is, but, I don't think at this moment we have all the information we need to make that decision.
Gotcha. So you like some more, and you're probably referring to executive session in that. Mary?
Yeah, so I'm just, I guess I'm trying to backtrack the last couple months. So Lewis can't tell us right now definitively if we have any surplus going forward into the next budget.
I cannot tell you for this year currently if and how much our surplus is. Correct.
Okay. And the previous years we were working with, do you know what the number was?
It's our surplus from last year is 158,000.
58,000. Okay.
158.
Right.
Okay. All right, so, yeah, Mary, go ahead.
Sorry, just one more thing, just really off the top of my head, we just filled the interventionist position at the end of December of this year for Middletown Springs. I just read in the paperwork that we, thankfully just had someone accept the position for the counselor for Wells, which is amazing. So I'm just kind of like spitballing and looking forward about those two really integral positions that we do budget for, that we have now just, had people in place for.
Okay. So we can come back to this as well, pending some of the other executive session discussion we're going to have. So,
Sorry, can I
yeah, go ahead.
So Mary, your point there is that if it's like, if we're looking at the contracted days that they worked, there's gonna be excess budget there because they didn't work the full calendar year. That
Right,
could
and so
potentially
this,
go towards the surplus.
yeah, and of course I could be wrong, but when I was reading, just the paperwork that we got, this afternoon, we have someone working for Wells for the that position that I talked about, and it was just prorated for the year. So just
Right.
kind of thinking back about, this 5 or 6 months that this person wasn't in that position.
Good point. Thank you. Thanks for raising that.
All right. So we'll come back to this in the warning after executive session. So if there's no other questions, we'll move on. So we have Superintendent Stell's not here yet, so we can come back to his report. It's informational only, so if you had any questions, he'll be on later to answer them. New business, the tabulator. So at our last meeting, we talked about potentially, at the request of our clerks, potentially purchasing a tabulator. I believe the superintendent was gonna reach out. I'm not sure if you
We
have.
have reached out to the Secretary of State and they will not provide one at no cost. I think based on where we are in time of year, I don't think we'll have one in place for this session, this next voting session. So, and we have submitted a bill to Senator Williams to give boards the option to eliminate the commingling. And so my recommendation, since we're not going to make it for this voting session, is wait and see where that bill goes. And if we don't have any success with that bill, then we can take this back up later this year and decide whether we wanted to purchase that tabulator.
Okay.
We are paying the town clerks, right? Some fund
Yeah, the,
account,
just Patty, our clerk.
just our clerk.
Because currently Wells just turns over the ballots to us, but they have to bring them up to Middletown.
Does it have to be the clerk that brings them, Meredith, or who? What's
It
the
has to
what are the
be
rules to
actually
transport?
JOP, Justice of the Peace,
Okay.
or BCA members, which are kind of one and the same.
Yep. Okay.
So it can be a select board member, which is a BCA member, and a Justice of the Peace. But it's it's supposed to be one of each party.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember this from last month too. And I think, as Lewis said, that if there's changes in the legislation, then we won't have to do the commingling and we won't have to.
But then we'll have voting, ballots being run in both places. So will we have to pay Wells essentially, or whoever isn't our clerk?
I think they just report them to the clerk. So,
Yes.
there's a lot of other.
Yeah, but they have to run them through the machine. They have to do the whole process. They have to have
Yeah.
separate cards for the ballot box, the counter rather. It's time. They have to test that ahead of time with their BCA members present.
Yeah, some good questions. I don't know. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, it isn't just like
Yeah.
reporting the numbers, because then they have to run it through, they have to tab it, they have to proof the tab, and then they report the numbers. So there's the pre-work before the election day as well as election day work.
Correct.
Those are good questions. I don't have all the answers, but I would say this was a request from the clerks. So
Yeah.
I think they would, based on my opinion, based on what I heard from them, is that this would definitely be preferred as opposed to having to transport them late at night.
Yeah, the transport, I've been involved in that too, and it's a challenge. If it snows or freezes rain or whatever, it's over the river and through the woods and,
Did they provide a cost for a tabulator?
We had purchased one for Quarry Valley and I believe it was around $6,000.
So you'd be purchasing 2 tabulators,
One tabulator.
but so then you just, what,
Yes, I already have one.
one where? Does Wells not have one? Wells has a tabulator.
Yeah.
And Middletown has a tabulator. Is this a separate tabulator to run the school? Election.
Yes, that would be it would, I
So it
think
would
be
s-
stored at Middletown.
But do you see what I mean? In order
Still have to
to
transport.
be,
Still,
you
yeah.
still have to transport the votes. You're either running the election, or 2 elections through one tabulator, or you're bringing all the votes and running them through a separate tabulator.
Maybe handy to have the clerks at one of the meetings to ask them these questions.
Well, I run
Yeah.
elections with them, so I'm an assistant clerk.
Okay.
So I have a pretty good idea.
Okay.
Um,
So I'm not sure what the exact plan was for the new tabulator. I know we listened to them, but I think afterwards, we were a little unsure of the details.
okay.
So
Is there any like software subscription or maintenance?
Yeah,
that we have
there's
to
like
pay?
these cards that are set into the tabulator. Cards as in chips.
Sure. Yeah,
You could use old lingo.
Yeah.
And they run with our ballot.
right.
And so when your town election is over, the town election cards are removed.
Yep.
And the school election cards are put into the ballot counter, which have already been tested previous to the election day. We make up fake ballots and run them
Gotcha.
through and test it.
Yeah, I guess my question is it just the machine or would we be on the hook for continued maintenance and,
those
New
cards
cards.
cost approximately $1,200 a year, I believe.
okay, we currently pay for those already?
I don't.
The state
haven't-
provides them.
I haven't
Okay.
seen one
And they almost always, except for this most recent election, come in with errors and have to be sent back
Oh.
and programmed and sent back out.
Okay,
This past election was the first time in Middletown, it's in the last 5 years, let's say, that they came in through clean.
I'm thinking that the one tabulators they have now, they're just using for the towns. And the tabulator that they were gonna purchase would be for when they come over, when Wells comes to Middletown, they would be able to run all of them through this new tabulator and not have to wait for the town tabulator to be free.
Right. But you'd still have to bring all, so the problem with
So if we did that,
transporting and commingling is still an issue. Well, even if you don't have to commingle, you still have to transport
so
the
if we didn't
ballots.
do the commingling correct, they would
You would
maybe
have,
have to just count the ballots manually without a tabulator.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
which is
guess,
that what they're doing now, or are they running them through the?
no, we run them through the tabulator after we just we finish the election entirely, which means, all the write-in votes, all of the checks and balances that you can run are done. And the cards are removed and our elections cards are put in.
And then you switch to this.
Yeah, and what Wells does and what they did last year is they counted all of the school ballots to make sure that it matched the voter rolls. And then that was
Your
it.
voter checklist, that's part of closing down the election on election night is checking with all the checklists and that's part of running through. The other thing is, if you had a second ballot, at least a ballot counter, you could actually be running that during the election so that you wouldn't have to wait. So people could feed their town ballot into one ballot box and feed their school ballot into the other, as opposed to putting it in a bin.
Yeah.
Done right.
Amanda?
This tabulator that Lewis speaks of with Quarry Valley, is that something that could potentially be purchased by the SU? And like, could a tabulator be an SU thing that somehow, I just wonder, like if Quarry Valley has one, are they running theirs at 7:00 and Wells Springs needs to run it at 9:00 and we could share?
We don't want to be moving the machine
Yeah.
around.
I think the fact that everybody has elections the same night would not make that a viable option.
Okay.
Yeah, they have a lot of towns to deal with too. And, Yeah, so, I mean, to me, you know, if there are changes in the legislation, that could just complicate things even more or simplify it, I don't know. And, you know, as Lewis said, even if we decided to purchase one now, it wouldn't be in place for March. So I'm fine with waiting to see what happens and then pick it up maybe in, you know, after the legislative session. And, you know, knowing that it's gonna cost, about 7,000, at least we'll have that information. And then maybe at that time, we can invite the district clerk or both clerks, I should say, to just kind of explain how the process would work. And I don't know, what do folks think?
Okay.
Sandy. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm good with waiting and getting more information.
okay. Anyone else?
I'm also good with waiting. I don't want to disregard their request and, you know, say that it's not appropriate. I just don't know that we need to make the decision right now to do it.
Yeah, and I guess, I don't know, knowing what it would cost, I mean, I don't know if that's a non-starter for folks.
I mean, we don't want to wear out the volunteers certainly, but, you know, temporarily, you know, if we can pay to have this done the way it's done now, pending this bill, and, you know, we haven't even seen a draft of it yet. What's it going to say? So I think we need to wait for any decision.
So the bill just gives districts the option to
So-
change their articles of agreement to allow the commingling, or to allow, to eliminate the commingling.
Which we're going to be doing anyway. If we only have one machine.
if we only have one machine, and, you know, I mean, and all of this isn't gonna be in place by this election, so
Yeah.
I think we should be tabling the whole discussion.
Do we know what a time frame to order one would be when to receive of the units? 6 months?
I believe it was, I don't think it was that long, but I believe it was a couple months last time, from start to finish.
So we do have time then. Not enough time to put it in place for this.
For this election, no.
Right. We've got time after that for next one.
I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, at least we'll have a better idea of, you know, how it would work. The whole process would work. All right, any other discussion on the tabulator? Okay. So we have executive session. Everyone should have a link. For those who are online, we will come back to this link after we're finished in executive session. And
I don't have a link, Eric.
okay, I'll send you one.
Okay, thanks.
So I will make a motion, under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A, and A, to move into executive session. Any discussion?
Eric, I just
Okay.
need that link as well.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
And, all right, motion carries unanimously. All right. actually, I got to stop the record.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was gonna wait for you to stop.
I'm bad about remembering to record and not record. We did it by consensus. Okay, it is 8 o'clock and we're out of executive session by consensus. And so we're gonna pick up where we left off on the budget discussion. Where, let's see, we'll start with Amanda, you wanted to add something to the budget. We'll start with that.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering how the board felt about increasing the board member stipend. Right now, we currently have 6,600 budgeted, 700 for the chair, 500 for each board member, which is a total of 3,700. And then Lewis said 100 for each SU meeting, and if it's 2 members, I think it's 50, but we'll go with 100. And if it's 2 members with each meeting, that's 2,400. So altogether, we're spending 6,100, have 500 extra from what I can see. Was wondering about adding a little bit to that and at least getting the board members to the same amount that we are paying our coaches, which is the 700, and then increasing Eric by the or whoever chair is by the same $200, bringing the chair to 900 instead of 7. And it'd be great if the SU meetings were 100, actually, if they are currently 50.
Okay. Thoughts?
I think it's something we should discuss at the reorganizational meeting.
Do we have to budget for it though?
It would go in the next budget.
For next year.
I think it would be less than $1,000 that we would be adding because there's already 500 extra in the budget.
You have to be in attendance to receive this money?
To receive which money?
The money that,
Not the Wellspring stipend.
no. So people who don't attend meetings do get paid.
Yes.
Jeez, oh crow.
Is that across the SU or is that just something that Wellsprings decided?
That's anywhere, I think.
Correct.
I thought it was based on who was in attendance.
The
Not-
SU one.
The SU one is just not for the district stipends.
That's what she just asked.
Maybe that's something we should discuss at the reorganizational meeting also.
I would support that, George.
Yeah, I would support that too. I just wonder if we should still budget for the increase and then at reorganization decide if you're paid on attendance or regardless of attendance. And then if you, I mean, I guess if we don't always have 12 meetings, sometimes we have 11, but if you do the math, it's like $63 a meeting. If you don't come, you don't get your $63. It's not a huge number. It's just a little bit.
11 meetings. What are you talking about?
No, I mean, like, as far as typical, usually we don't have a July meeting. Sometimes we might and call it, whatever. But, and then I
Yeah.
guess
We used
special
to not have a
meetings.
December one either. Or a January, one or the other.
Yeah.
And I am looking at the amounts that were paid for the SU stipends, and it is 100.
Yeah, just after taxes, it's less, but. Okay, so I mean,
And we're not paid for committees.
Correct. It's
Correct.
just for the regular board meeting.
yeah, it's just a one-time stipend. I know, some of the VSBA board chair networking webinars that I've attended, that conversation has come up, like what are the stipends for each board? And you know, I will say that, so far, what I've heard is we're pretty low. But, you know, I think, when I think about changing it, you know, I don't know, I kind of think it's, you hear some of the, like, I guess, other elected officials giving themselves a pay raise, you know, like, so it's like, you know what I mean? So it's like.
But we also get called volunteers a lot. Thank you for volunteering is what I hear a lot. And I have to correct people.
We also pay like, and I'm going by memory, I don't have the paper in front of me, but like our clerk and treasurer, they get like 1,500, don't they? Not 5. And not that they aren't appreciated and do their job, but also don't come to every meeting and do everything that we do as well. So I don't know. I definitely think that there's room for.
I'm a clerk. I don't get that amount.
The district.
No, the district
Okay.
clerk.
The
Yeah.
district clerk only gets money for attending our annual meeting. They don't get stipend. They only get
He
money,
gets money for running the election.
Right.
not from us.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what that increase was for running the election.
I think it's like 1,500.
Well, that's, I believe what she wanted and but we didn't have that budgeted, so
We
she
never,
settled for 7 or something, and we are probably supposed to do something about it at the annual meeting.
no,
It
no,
was in
so,
addition to what she was already getting.
no. So the treasurer gets like 14 something. Okay, 1,500. Okay. So, but we had that discussion last year about the district clerk and about giving a stipend. We never did anything with that. We
No,
never-
she agreed to do it for what we had in our budget. So we didn't,
I think the discussion was that was something that was set at the annual meeting and couldn't be adjusted
Yeah,
until the
right.
next
So
annual
until-
meeting.
yeah,
So
Okay.
it may be something that somebody wants to bring up at the annual meeting in
I think
February.
so.
So it doesn't have to be at the annual meeting. So I looked it up and I think I reached out to you about it as well. It was done at the organizational meeting of the district before like during the merger. So that's when it was set, but it was a regular meeting. It wasn't done at an annual meeting or anything like that. So we could do that at any time. You know, any of the stipends, whatever it may be. So it's just, my thought would be to put it on the agenda as a matter of public interest before we go and change it. But I don't, from my recollection, we didn't make those changes. Because at the time, at that meeting, it's like Lewis said, it was understood that it had to be done at the organizational meeting or annual meeting. So, you know, maybe, I don't know, we could really want to kick the can down, you know.
especially when we're trying to sign the budget.
Yeah, so I think if we're gonna do anything with any of these stipends, we should probably make the decision tonight. And if we wanted to hold off on the board stipends, you know, like we could piecemeal it, we can figure it out later. We can, if folks aren't comfortable with increasing that to the budget now, you know, so there's options here, you know, so whatever folks think.
Could there be an option of allocating some money to use for these purposes? But if we don't use them, they can go to the surplus or go to another budget line item as the board decides later on.
It'll be increasing.
Still be increasing, but the amounts we're increasing are not going to push too much, or I don't know.
The amount we're increasing for us.
Yeah, or for stipends to the clerk or.
Well, from my recollection, stipend for the clerk was upwards of $1,500 because it included paying, because Middletown pays their poll workers. Wells does not. So part of it is paying for them as well as paying for their time. Yeah, the PCA also gets paid for the time and testing the ballots and all that ahead of time, as well as paying the clerk's time creating the, ballots themselves and running that process.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if, putting money in there now and then deciding on it later is,
It-
it really depends how much we're talking about. If it's a financially responsible way to go, I think if we're going to do it, let's make a decision to do it or not. I mean,
It would be a $900 increase to give everybody a $200 increase based on what's already in the budget because there's already extra money. And that's if there's 12 SU meetings with 2 people getting the additional $100 on top of what the chair gets. So it'd be a $900 increase. That's it. Because
would
there's
be-
already extra money in there with the 6,600.
There's no extra money. It would be 1,400. There's $3,700 budgeted. It's $500 for 6 people plus
It-
one person gets 700.
It says 66 on the board members. I have to find the page. It's on page 6. So
66 was what was paid. There's $7,300 budgeted.
okay, so there's even more. It'd be even less of an increase.
No, so there's $3,700 budgeted for the district stipends and $3,600 budgeted for the SU stipends. It's a total of $7,300.
Yeah, because there's 3 people who attend the SU.
There's 7 board members. 6 of them get
Right.
$500. That's 3,000, and one person gets 700. That's $3,700.
Okay, so I assumed that the chair had to attend the SU meetings. So that was part of the additional difference. I was not adding in another 100 for the chair at the meetings. That's where my math was off. Because I thought that they attended anyway. My mistake.
So it would be $1,400 to increase it.
and for the
And then
district
we can
clerk,
decide at reorganization if you get paid if you don't come, or if you don't get paid if you don't come.
we don't need to wait for the organization to make any of those decisions. I guess in terms of the budget, do folks feel comfortable adding anything in regards to stipends?
For negotiating contracts and I don't know. I don't feel like we should.
Matt?
That sounds like good sound reasoning. So what, George?
Meredith?
I don't feel good about it, no. I'd like to, but I don't feel good about adding to it. I'd be more concerned about our clerk being properly funded, and like I said, our treasurer already gets 1,500, so
Mhm.
those are more important to me.
I wonder if it would be something to put on next month's agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Amanda, thoughts? Laura?
I'm
I'm
fine with it being on next month's agenda. I mean, my opinion's not going to change. I think that we're paying our coaches more for a couple of weeks, and yes, they're with the students, but I think that I've been on the board for 4 years and I haven't seen an increase, and we increase everybody else. I don't think it's any different than anybody else asking for extra. So I'm fine talking about it another month.
Okay. Mary?
I didn't even know we got a stipend until like a couple months ago. So I was just, I genuinely, like I texted Eric and I was like, I had this money in my account, so I was just, I was happily surprised by that. So that's where I came from.
Okay. All right, so I think that kind of wraps up that conversation. And we'll have that, we'll do that for next month. I'll write that down. And I guess related to the budget, the surplus to capital maintenance is up for discussion.
I'll say that number again. I would say I like the wording in that warrant, and I would say 30,000 this year. That's just a starting point. If people wanted to go up, I'd go up, but sort of Go ahead, Louis.
So I understand the importance of the capital improvement fund and it's great to put money in there. My concern is that you're already showing an 8.45% increase. That's going to be right on the ballot that taxpayers are going to see. Putting another item on the ballot is going to increase that percentage and it's going to throw it over 9%. So if you feel like you could still get voters to approve a 9% increase, then go ahead. But I think you're already teetering on a number that's really high. Middletown is going to be taking the brunt of it with their tax rate increase, being up 7.73% right now. I just don't think it's the right year to be putting money into a capital improvement fund when you're showing such large increases, and your increases, I mean, are largely outside your control this year, with that weighted pupil dropping. But I think there's times to be putting money away, and I don't think this is the best year to be doing that.
Even a much lesser amount than 65.
I mean, like I said, 30,000, if I throw 30,000 in, you are, you're at 9.2% overall spending per pupil. And Middletown's increase is going to be 8.26% tax rate increase based on the pupil number that we have.
That's huge. That's huge. You know, in regards to the capital maintenance fund, I mean, the maintenance line items were increased like $45,000. Most of it's going to control tech, but you know, but still, well,
But this capital maintenance fund, this would be a separate item on the budget. So technically our budget as a whole could pass, but the up to $30,000 could not. Is that correct? Because it would be
It is a separate,
item.
it's a separate item on the ballot, but you have to pull that revenue out of your other budget. So it's going to impact the wording on your other item.
But if that doesn't, if the second item doesn't pass, but there's really no way to explain that. Is that what you're saying?
So if the capital improvement item doesn't pass and the budget does, even though you'll have to change the wording for the ballot, but if it doesn't pass, then the tax rate will change based on that not passing. But you don't, based on what we know today, you still have to report it as if it does pass.
Even though it's nice to have something on the ballot that people can say no to. It's psychologically a thing.
And we've seen where they vote the budget down and approve the capital improvement fund. That's what happened last year in Rutland Town.
yeah, I think that's all that. But I personally, I think we should just not take the money and, but I don't think we should put it in the capital maintenance fund this year. We did it 2 years in a row. You know, understanding that, you know, there are a lot of potential changes or needs for the building plan, but you know, there's a lot of other things up in the air too, you know, around the building. So
I'm looking at the 8 or 9%. That scares me. So yeah, maybe not this year.
Mary?
Yes, sorry, I know it's getting late. So just to be clear, like that capital improvement fund is coming directly from the surplus from the previous year, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so if we didn't use any of that for the capital improvement fund, the surplus would just go towards the budget, correct?
Yes.
Yes, that's what's currently happening.
It helps us. Yeah.
Okay, again,
Do you
I
think
feel
that
like
if
we
we
should.
don't put it,
No, I'm sorry, Amanda. Yeah, I mean, this is just me, but I feel like we should continue to show that we're committed to this 5-year plan with money behind it. That's just my vote.
But we've increased the repairs lines, right?
We did bump it up
Substantially.
already, so that makes me more comfortable with not doing this year.
45,000, we increased the repairs lines by.
A total of 45. Yeah.
So
Amanda?
I wonder, I have mixed feelings. I'm in favor of not putting it in and putting it into the budget, but then I worry, nothing gets cheaper, everything gets more expensive. So then next year, if we don't have money to put back into our budget with a surplus, then we have a greater increase in the future if we don't pocket something this year. Is that a valid understanding? Like if we don't put it somewhere to have another potential surplus by putting it in capital maintenance, then next year the tax rate could be even worse because we don't have extra money, right? Is that a good
correct.
understanding?
You'll be starting next year with, if you don't have any surplus this year, you'll be starting the following year's budget without that revenue. And so you're
Right.
starting off in the negative.
Right.
The hope is that some of those other factors will be more in your favor next year. If you don't continue to see an enrollment drop, then your pupil number will be a steadier. Maybe your housing will start to stabilize. And so those other factors won't be driving down or driving up your tax rate.
Right. I feel like I understand where we're saying we already raised the maintenance lines and whatever, but I think to prevent next year's budget from looking even worse, maybe we should keep at least 30,000 in. And if it doesn't pass, readdress it. But I don't think there's a harm in trying to pass it. The worst that happens is it fails and we try again.
Every time we try again, there's a cost to that too.
What is that cost financially?
Well, for one thing, it's another election.
Yeah.
I don't know. For now.
I would say a couple of thousand.
Yeah, I was gonna say 3,500.
It's a couple of thousand. I mean, usually we do another round of marketing and there's whatever the cost is going to be for the ballot. It's like $12 for the ballot. And then the cost of printing the ballots and if you decide to mail the ballots, that's an additional cost.
It's not a regular,
It's not a regular
town
election.
vote, so. getting people
Special
out.
election.
Mary?
Yeah, just really quick, Lewis, do you have the number on the current capital improvement fund number for our district, for each schools? Is it upwards of 200 or am I wrong?
I can look that up. Just one second.
Just wondering what we have in there already.
So currently have 194,000.
Okay, thank you.
And for example, the new PA system at Wells, that was like 40 grand, 30 grand. That came out of
After funds, though, that wasn't local budget.
Okay. But something like that priced around $30,000-$40,000.
Okay.
These things are, small but expensive, like pieces of the school that are required and need to be maintained. And I'm feeling these things sort of break on us all the time. I get the feeling I haven't been on the school board for the longest time or been a homeowner the longest time, but so I respect when you guys say that an increase of is it 8 or 9% can cause some jitters in the system, but I'd be willing. I'm seeing some heads nod here, so I'd be willing to go just slightly below that or contributing something towards it, but not maybe going to that threshold where it turns over to the 9 or the 8. Were we talking 8 or 9? 9, right?
So we're currently at 8 points.
Okay,
So
so
we're going to 9.
to 9. Okay.
My thought process at this point, where we're at on this budget is we're trying to ensure that we can get it passed and, you know that it's supporting the schools and the students in the way it is. And I think shifting funds from a surplus to the capital maintenance fund right now may not be such a good move, because, we don't know what's going to happen, when everything's said and done with the yield and anything else that comes out of the legislature. So I think there's a lot of things to think about. And if the last 2 years again, we put money into the capital maintenance fund, to show that we have aging equipment. I think that's the biggest piece with the capital maintenance fund, is that a lot of that equipment is old, and we're not replacing equipment, we're updating it by like 20-30 years. And so there's money for that. And I'm really worried getting closer to that 9%. I mean, this whole time I'm thinking, oh geez, 5.6%, it's changed.
And it's 9% just for Middletown. Wells would have a different percentage increase.
Well, the 9% is the spending per pupil.
Per pupil,
That's going to
okay.
be on the ballot.
Okay,
That's the number that, yeah,
okay.
And
Article 8.
again, part of that's caused by the change in the student count, right? But man, we can explain that away, but that's not what they're going to be looking at on the ballot.
Okay, so I'd like to move this on. Amanda, really quick.
Yeah, sorry, just while we're talking capital maintenance, is that control tech contract ending at the end of 2025? Or are we,
Nope.
when does that end?
It's a 3-year contract.
We just did it last year.
And we signed it 24?
We signed it back in August.
Okay.
So, so I guess, from what I'm hearing, kind of mixed, but probably not include the capital maintenance fund. Not to put any surplus in the capital maintenance fund. And I guess we're just kind of looking for
Motion
Consensus.
to approve the budget.
that would be the next thing, yes.
That's Article 9.
Let's Article 9 with the numbers that Lewis is going to tell us.
Well, we'll do the budget first and then the warning.
Okay.
But the budget is factoring in surplus going into the right.
That surplus is
Previous.
offsetting.
Yeah.
All the additional costs. Did I say that right? And then
So Meredith, were you making that motion?
I was trying to, but
It's $6,390,446.61.
how many cents?
61 cents.
Okay. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss about the budget or?
nope. Or something else you want to do?
Nope, I am good. I think, if folks are happy, I'm motion to approve the budget for $6,390,000, $446.61 would be in order.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by George. Any additional discussion? All right, all those in favor? please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? I don't know if that was unanimous.
Are you looking at me? I said aye.
I heard you. I didn't hear Mary or
Oh, sorry.
I,
for yes.
yes.
Maybe Mary's not there. I don't know.
I'm here.
Okay, what was your vote?
I voted aye. I mean,
Okay.
I voted aye.
I just want to make sure. All right, so it's unanimous. Okay, next up, the warning. Are you going to print out another one for us to sign tonight? I wasn't sure what
Yes.
the plan. Okay.
I can go get it.
If I share it with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, before you print it, really quick, and I know everyone's had this to review, just any other typos or corrections. And you said you had a different version, so
Yep.
you may not be working on off of this one, right?
Yep, so just let me know what you're looking at.
Okay, so Article 9's obviously gone.
Yep, so I made that change to make it so that it says Article 7 through 8 at the top right here.
Can we tab line 2 in Article 4? Sorry, I don't mean to be that person.
Mine's lined up.
Yeah. it's
Mine's
just-
lined up.
See how it prints out.
Yeah. That's why I was asking if you had an updated version, because
What was there, a spelling?
I think it was
mistake?
that, I think it was that there on.
Okay,
Is that what you were referring to, Amanda?
Yes.
Okay.
it's lined up on the screen. We can see how it prints, but
Okay. Sorry, thank you. I hate that I wasn't trying to be that person.
And silly question, has anyone double checked the virtual meeting link? Just in case, I mean,
It works. I just clicked it.
okay. All right. And then the language for that would be, if approved will result in pupil education spending of 13,153,
153.
which is a 8.66% increase.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I have.
Can you put 2 copies, a single side?
When did you sign? When do you get it to the clerks or clerk?
I
For
think
clerks,
you
I
can
should
sign
say.
it tonight and then I think it goes to the clerks. It has to go before the 23rd, I believe it is.
Okay.
If you leave it in Middletown, I can stop at the school in the morning to sign it.
All right. Well, first things first,
Or send it to your Wells, right?
Yeah.
We could send it with Carol to Wells.
Okay, whatever's easier.
Yeah.
I just
Okay.
know Mary's virtual too, and she's in Middletown, so
Okay.
whatever's easier for you guys.
All right, we'll leave it with Corey then.
Okay.
so we need a motion to approve the annual meeting district warning. If everyone is fine with the language.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Amanda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. And I think that concludes our business for the night. We have, public comment. So, did anyone, from the public want to comment tonight? Tammy?
Good evening, everyone. I just, couple of things. We are looking for the warnings as soon as you can get them to us. I know, Laurel that does our book wants to get everything in for, review before the printing. So that would be great. Is the town meeting going to be in Wells or Middletown this year?
Well,
Okay. My other question was, when you guys were talking about your stipends, am I understanding this right, that you guys get for the SU meetings, $100 per meeting, so $1,200 a year for that? If there's 12 meetings, right?
Yeah, it's 100 per person, 3 people. Yep,
if you attend.
if you attend.
So we're paying the people who attend SU $1,200, but yet our local people were paying $500? Don't they do more work for our local schools than the SU?
What am I doing with this?
Oh, but it was,
I mean, I haven't been on the board in a while, but I just don't understand why we're paying more for the SU meetings than the regular ones.
yeah, it's a conversation that came up a while back, and the
I
board.
mean, years ago when I was on the board, we got one stipend, and I mean, although we were all on the SU board, but God, back then we had to drive to all the meetings, and then we also had to supply food when we were at home, and I mean, it ended up we were giving away more than we were making, so it's definitely changed with this virtual now too. It was just something I was trying to figure out why that is. So I can understand Amanda's point on some of that.
Yep.
And I did have one more question. I lost it, so I guess that's it. Oh, I know it was. Sorry. So this capital funding, Louis, are you talking about from the 130 that was from the prior year offsetting this budget, or are you saying whatever we end at for the 24-25 year that goes off against the budget?
The money that's currently in the budget is from the FY 24 fiscal year. So we ended
130 or whatever.
the 150. It's currently 158,000 that's in the budget.
Okay, so you're asking about if a portion of that number should be put to the capital fund.
That is what the board was asking, yes.
I thought it was the portion of the surplus to come.
No, it's the audited surplus that we have, the $158,000. That's in the budget.
Okay, because I got confused too, because you were saying you didn't know what the surplus was going to be. And I'm like, I would have thought we would have known it. So I think it got a little confusing there. The other point is if you do have a surplus you look like you're going to have at the end of June this year, you could maybe, instead of pulling from your capital fund for the PA system or anything else, use it out of your surplus before dipping into that if you don't ask for capital funds this year. Just a thought. That's all I got.
All right, thank you, Tammy.
Yep.
Is there anyone else who wanted to speak tonight? Okay, that concludes our business. So motion to adjourn would be in order at 8:37.
He's here, and then
I'll make that motion. A motion by Max. All those in favor, please say aye.
Hi.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.